Cars on track for pre-qualifying as we get set for the final round of Fanatec GT World Challenge Europe powered by AWS. Endurance Cup, we are in Barcelona. Titles up for grabs this weekend, both in Endurance Cup and also the overall titles in some classes within Fanatec GT. Fans are here largely to cheer on Valentino Rossi, but they are also going to be treated to tomorrow an excellent final round of the championship. 3 hours it will be, with of course the mandatory pit stops, the driver changes, and in some cases a farewell tour. WRT coming to the end of its Audi association, one of the mainstays of its early success. Stefan Ortelli in the paddock today, here to cheer on his old employers. But as the road gets busy, cars head out onto the circuit. David Anderson and John Watson are trackside, and after a fairly quiet free practice session, now I think we're going to start to see people trying a bit harder, looking to qualifying rather than just looking for data.
Well, I mean, qualifying is going to be 9 o'clock on Sunday morning, and track conditions now, well, the track temperature's doubled from what it was, over doubled from what it was this morning, and the ambient is up by a smaller fraction, but this is a racetrack that is utterly and totally dominated by ambient and track temperature in particular. And what people found out when they went out this morning is someone out on new tyres, as we saw with the number 2 Mercedes AMG GT3, did a very impressive time, 144.3. What they will be doing here this afternoon, for me, it would be more about, we'll run all through your driver lineups, 3 drivers in most cases, 2 in a couple of other cases. Give them experience of running on a racetrack with this very high ambient and high track temperature to see where the differences lie. And as I mentioned in this morning's broadcast, a car that was untouched from this morning will feel rubbish, absolute undrivable this afternoon.
Now, Augusto Farfus drives number 98, the Rover Racing BMW. We've already got, can you believe, Jeff Kingsley being reported to the stewards for speeding in the pit lane. No one's done a lap time yet, but already we've got the first transgression of the session being looked at. In fact, Sebastian Bode it was. It's just changed on the timing screen, so illustrates Sebastian Bode was at the wheel of the car. So he is going to be investigated by the stewards. Christopher Meese, we didn't see very much of this morning. He's already done the absolute best in the first sector, as not everybody has ventured out. Now, we got a bit concerned this morning, didn't we, about Barwell, but largely they were running on old tyres with drivers learning the circuit. So the understanding is that new tyres can give you a good couple of seconds around here.
Well, they certainly will do when it comes to qualifying, and that's what we had this morning from a number of the competitors. They opted to use a fresh set of tyres, a new set of tyres, to see what they can expect come 24 hours later. And I mean, Barwell took a very, I'd say, mature, grown-up approach to that session this morning, a free practice session, and they didn't go for, let's run the new tyre, let's get that time in, let's all have a great feel-good sensation. How quick are we? Well, we know they went very well on Friday, and that first session they were 26th quickest. So it's all about tyres, and this is a circuit that is a very, very unpredictable circuit, but actually in that unpredictability, I can guarantee you that track temperatures will have a major bearing on the times we're going to see here this afternoon.
Now, the road is busy. We did see this morning a few people waited until, not the end, but they certainly left it a few minutes before heading out onto the circuit. Here, it's busy pretty much straight away. We've got a very full entry, as ever, with getting on for 50 cars. Track position, traffic management, all part of it. As you look at the AF Corsa Ferrari Pro-Am of Stefano Costatini, they, of course, are fighting for a championship this weekend in class.
So, well, personal best in the first sector, currently at 18th quickest. Is sort of somewhat irrelevant at this very early phase. The only car that is really showing pace is right now the 25 Audi of Christopher Meese. Got a purple time in sector 1 on this lap. His best currently at 146.7. Now that car, just looking to see where it was this morning, Christopher Meese, they were 19th quickest on a 145.6. So I would suggest that maybe that 25 Audi didn't do a full-blooded qualifying simulation. They went for a time on a set of tyres that was a good set, but not necessarily a brand new set. So what Christopher Meese is going to do in this session, we wait to see. 146.7 will be eclipsed. Oh, well, there's an expensive bit of carbon fibre. Whose car is that from?
And how's it got there? seems it's not just dropped off on its own, has it? So potentially contact out on the circuit.
That's up into turn 12. So whether that was contact or whether it just fell off of its own volition, certainly it's sufficiently large that it needs to be cleared, and that may have a localized yellow over that part of the racetrack. In fact, from the commentary booth, looking what a good 500 yards ahead of me, let's say 510 if I was on the back tee at Filford Golf Course, that would be, yeah, I can still see that bit of bodywork lying on the course.
It is a fair chunk. I'm looking to see anybody coming into the pit lane because they've lost it. Christopher Mies then, the fastest, 1:46.513. I don't think he got in the car this morning, did he? I don't remember us talking about it.
Well, Christopher Mies did do the time. So his time was, I don't know what part of the morning it was set. It was set at 10:27, so it was towards the end of that pre-qualifying session. But still, that bodywork remains on the outside of turn 12. It's not directly in line of cars coming through. It's a right-hand corner, so everybody's hugging the curb on the inside. But there may be one or two that get a bit wayward, and, well, it's still lying at the edge of the racetrack, midway through the corner.
Now, Lukas Stoltz has gone fastest, so it's now Mercedes top, as it was this morning. He's done a 1:46.372. Christopher Mies on this lap, a little bit slower, so he's not going to be an improver necessarily, but this isn't really the session in which you need to chase times, is it?
To me, it's not a session about looking for a qualifying run. For me, it's all about go out, learn what the car is going to do with a much higher track temperature. We need to make the car work in these conditions. These are what we're going to have to contend with, certainly in the early part of starting a race at 3 p.m. In the first hour, maybe first couple of hours, the last hour might see a little bit of a relief in track temperatures, but by which time the race will be more or less formed. One would assume, but that's an assumption I wouldn't say is cast in gold.
Now, Rob Bell up to third fastest in number 38, the Jota McLaren, and has also just done an absolute best in the first sector. Again, much of the change, if you like, in the pace of various cars, you can put down, I guess, to new tyres, can't you? And there is Rob Bell, but he's found himself in traffic. He is currently behind Miguel Molina in number 51, Ferrari.
Full course yellow in 10 seconds.
And that full course yellow called for by the race director is, I guess, to get that bit of bodywork out of the way.
I think that's a very good call.
2, 1, full course
so
yellow now. It will be a short full course yellow to remove a debris in turn 12.
To the turn 12 zone, and that will enable one of the marshals in that area to sprint across the gravel and hopefully not stumble, because running in gravel is like running on the sand on a beach. It's not the easiest thing. There he goes. So he's reaching the edge of the racetrack. Everybody has slowed down onto the racetrack, picks the piece up, and he almost stumbles as he gets back into the gravel, but he's recovered, and he's making an amazing recovery to get back to the safety of the barriers, and he's over the barrier now with the errant piece of bodywork. Give the man a gold medal.
Fantastic. Job done, track clear, and so on short notice we can go green. We have done so, and everyone picks up the pace, and that's the beauty of a full course yellow like that. Instead of having to stop the session because you'd lose loads of time with people coming in and then going back out, and just suspend things for 10, 20 seconds, and the problem is sorted.
So we don't know whose car the bodywork, we couldn't identify it because it was actually upside down.
Yeah.
So we're looking at the inside of the bodywork. We couldn't see even the paint or the gel coat of the carbon fiber. Whatever it was, it's now behind the barriers. And I mean, I don't know whether it'll ever end up on eBay or not, but hopefully it'll be returned to its rightful owner. But there'll be a few bids, no doubt.
Oh, well, indeed. The team might have to bid for it. I thought it was blue and black, the glimpse I had of it, but we'll keep an eye to see if anybody does with a battered car head to the pit lane. As there, the silver class leading car at the moment, Casper Stevenson, who debuted in GT3 in the Gulf 12 Hours at the start of this season. There, number 33. That's the bit that was the debris. So 33 had that accident this morning, has shed bodywork again. So yes, it was blue and black. It's number 33 Audi, the car that Maxime Robin crashed this morning.
Okay.
And Arnold Robin has been in this afternoon.
Just a little sort of bit to fill in something. There's not an awful lot happening on the racetrack that's going to really excite me, but here's something I think is interesting. At 9:19 this morning,
Yeah.
and we're now at 1:19, just past it. Fastest lap of that session was set by the number 2 get speed, Mercedes-AMG GT3. At this point, that same car has set the fastest lap of a 1:46.3, precisely 2 seconds slower.
Interesting.
Analyze.
It's warmer. They're not yet on new tyres. You can see that the patched up Audi circulates still, patched up with front damage as well as rear wing damage from earlier on. But yes, a big chunk of time to lose, isn't it? And that's the fastest car, 2 seconds.
It's the fastest car, and as you mentioned at the beginning of the broadcast, a new set of tyres here, but that's at early hours, 9 o'clock in the morning. It doesn't necessarily follow that you're going to get 2 or 2.5 seconds at this time of day, because ambient temperature's up, track temperature's up, change in aero loads, engine doesn't quite pull as strongly with a slightly warmer air, so all the factors that were in your favour at 9 o'clock or just after 9 o'clock this morning, they're gone.
Jean-Baptiste Simonau presses on, comes then now towards turn 13 in the Rofco Audi, the Gulf liveried Silver Cup winning car. They've had a great season collectively, these guys, and former Porsche star Jean-Baptiste Simonau down towards turn 15 with that massive gravel trap on the outside. He's up the curb and now accelerates down this long pit straight.
278, I think, was the quickest we saw this morning, which is pretty impressive. That's 170 plus miles per hour. And both the Iron Lynx Ferraris, I have to say, were somewhat, I don't know why. I mean, the 71 car was only 22nd quickest this morning. The 51 was 32nd quickest. And this is the 71 is in a championship race. Needs to find a shed load of time. Does not need to be starting where it ended up this morning would be on the 11th row of the grid. So a lot of work for the Iron Lynx, but again, as maybe in the case of Barwell, they're keeping their powder dry until it matters, and that will be tomorrow morning in qualifying.
Yeah, we saw Fuoco have that spin this morning, but even so, the car was never looking that sparkling. This is the Nicolai Kjærgaard-driven McLaren. Now, Kjærgaard has been very, very quick this season. Uses the curb there, former single-seater gun, and he comes then now up to the completion of the lap because he's about to wriggle through the chicane, drops down the hill, that fiddly chicane, but then the road starts to open up again here.
On the exit of turn 15, drivers are being warned about using you've got that banana curve on the exit. Beyond it, there's a stretch of green, you might call it AstroTurf or green paint. They're not allowed to go over that. They can run up to it, but not allowed to go over it. So if anybody, again, at that part of racetrack is too ambitious, that'll be a deletion of their time.
Number 7 McLaren, Frederick Schandorf at the wheel of it. WRT asking if they can get that bit of bodywork back from the marshal's post. So they've seen it, they know it's safe for the moment, and they'd rather like it back.
Well, I think I've seen it on eBay already. Any offers?
Has there been a bid from a Mr. V. Voss of Belgium? Right, Frederick Schandorf presses on in number 7 McLaren, and 25th that car is at the moment. McLaren's looking good yesterday. They were quick in both sessions.
Yes, they've been in some of the sector times that we've been seeing. The top, out of the top 5, 4 were McLarens, and a lot of that is down the straight here into turn 1 as we go on board with Schandorf through turn 7 and 8. That quick flick left, then the transition back to the right, the climb uphill into turn 9. Hold on to your seatbelts because on the outside of the corner, well, that's about as far left as you want to go. If you drop a wheel into the gravel, that's going to be an instant snap oversteer to the right. Dread to think what it's going to do to your bodywork if you hit the wall on the inside of the corner. Down now through 11, up through 12. Goes on and on. You sit there, you wait, you wait, you wait. Now you can get on it. Short sprint down to 13. And really, 13's more about getting the car lined up, stopped now for 14. Don't be aggressive on the curb. Now you can start to chase the throttle out of 15, but don't run over that yellow painted banana curb. Flat out through turn 16. And before you know it, you're coming across start-finish line. So, Frederick Schandorf, 26th.
Big bounce over the curb there from the Sky Tempesta Mercedes. Now, the wheel of that car is Jonathan Quee, who I think I'm right in saying gets a grid drop because he's on 3 behavioural warning points.
So is Dries van Thor, by the way.
Okay.
He's also one of the drivers that, if he makes any mistakes, anything even in the pit lane, could be a penalty which would add him, or it would result in him having a 5-place grid drop.
Okay. Now Jonathan Wee, good to have him back. Presses on, working hard behind the wheel, but accelerates then now towards turn 4. Ahead of him is the Dries van Thor Audi, number 32. Dries at the wheel of it.
I mean, looking at the amount of hand movement going into turn 4, the view of the car on the circuit doesn't look as aggressive or as dramatic as it does from the cockpit. And I don't truly understand why Jonathan Wee was having to deal with that kind of sudden oversteer. But the Mercedes AMG GT3 is probably the most benign of all the brands that we see racing throughout the season. And again, it's sort of Sky Tempesta have not really seemingly got on top of what makes this car such a great turnkey customer race car.
But they've been to different teams, haven't they? Because 2Cs have run the car in the UK. They've been to Grupper M. Now they're at Haupt Racing Team. We know that Haupt is good, but again, look at the work Jonathan Wee is having to put into that car, whereas with the Ferrari, it just looks so easy in seasons past for them.
Well, I mean, the Ferrari, I think, is one of the best chassis out there, but I think the Mercedes is ultimately, as a turnkey GT3 car, about as good as it gets. But look, I mean, the amount of work Jonathan Wee is having to put in coming through turn 14, then the switch back again, having to balance the car on throttle and steering, whether he's just too aggressive on the throttle too early in the exit of a corner, or whether that is just an inherent imbalance that he's having to adjust and correct. Well, it looks to me as if it's harder work than it needs to be, but I don't have the solution. I'm only a commentator.
Jonathan Wee has lost a lap for exceeding track limits over at turn 9, which is in that third sector at the top of the hill.
It's at the top of the hill.
Yeah.
It's the challenging and the most challenging, I would say, corner on this Barcelona circuit. Oh, Gugnon's got purple middle sector.
And he's also done the best lap anyway. He's done a 1:45.548 last time. So by 69 thousandths of a second, this is the quickest car in the session, and Jules Gounon should go faster still. He does, 1:45.561. Actually a bit slower in the last sector, but sectors 1 and 2 together were enough to carry him to an even quicker time.
Yeah, the middle sector was a good time indeed. Purple for Jean Gounon. And he's no longer a fried fish finger, which is a Gugnon. He's a Gounon.
Yes, after his Alton Park exploits in British GT, he became known as Chicken Nugget, as in a chicken goujon. But Jules Gounon, faster again, faster than anybody in the first sector. Signalling intent here. They're not here just to drive around for 3 hours tomorrow. They're here to win a championship.
And this, in many respects, is very important, this point right now, because regardless of wherever they will qualify, and I would imagine at the end of the day, I would expect to see the 88 Mercedes somewhere towards the front, is to know the pace that they will have at the point when the lights go out, up to, let's say, the first 15, 20 minutes, because that will make such a difference to what then they are able to do when they come to be the first of the 2 mandatory driver and wheel tire refueling pit stops. Middle sector has dropped. He's just about halved the gain he made and he's backed out of it.
Yeah, completely has made.
So he's decided that no point running up to traffic, and that's intelligent driving from Jules Gounon. So he's got clear road briefly. So he's got to go and do it all over again. You can see traffic just coming out of turn 15 ahead of him. So what will he now attempt to do?
And that section of the circuit is going to be relevant when we get to racing tomorrow, because if you are battling for position, if you're on a charge but you catch traffic in that last sector, it's going to go against you. This is Arjen ten Guven, 16th quickest in the Allied Racing Porsche, star of Porsche Super Cup and ADAC GT. Remember, he was part of that winning Turkish team back in Bahrain in the Nations Cup a few years ago.
Would you suggest that he's Turkey's leading track race driver? I don't know many other that are running at that level. I can't think of any single-seater. There may be somebody. I'm sure we'll get a nod from someone somewhere later.
There's Cembalo Bassi in Formula 2, but he's not had the success rate that Arjen ten Guven has. We got a handful in GT4 here this weekend, but yeah, I think in terms of things won, Arjen ten Guven is the top one. Yes, he's a Porsche Super Cup champion. and he specialises in Porsches. So he's just gone from 16th to 8th fastest. So Gounod, Mathieu Drudy, then Dries Van Voort, then Christian Kleen, then Hubert Haupt. Benjamin Lessène is 6th, Lucas Stoltz 7th, Anchin Guven is 8th, Christopher Mies 9th, and Norbert Siedler's McLaren is 10th. That's the order at the moment.
Christian Kleen, who sort of blotted his copybook a little bit this morning by reversing into turn 7 and then returning to the track and showering it with gravel, but he's recovered. He's currently in that provisional 4th position. Dan Hart, is it Dan Hart? No, I was sitting at an angle looking at timing and scoring. Herbert Hoopt is currently 5th. That's a good effort from Herbert Hoopt.
It is. In that car that he shares with Arjun Maini and Florian Scholzer, Hubert Haupt, the owner of the team. Many, of course, of the mechanics within it, old Black Falcon Mercedes workers. Right, Janis Fittier we're looking at, who is 41st right now in another of those Haupt Racing Team Mercedes.
That Mercedes also looked a little unstable coming through turn 9. I thought I saw a little flick at the rear, but personal bests first and second sector, so whatever I thought I saw, not really impeding the pace of the number 4 in 41st position. Slows down again, traffic. You know, this is the frustration of this sequence of corners down at 13, 14, 15. The flow is severely affected. What's going on in the attempt to pit?
They're about to send out Dennis Marshall, aren't they? We were talking this morning about the rear bodywork on the WRT Audis. They didn't have those, if you like, end plates.
Abbreviated end plates.
Yeah, behind the rear wheels. The attempt to have kept them. We need to have a look at a WRT car in this session to see what they're doing this time around. As you look now at Norbert Siedler. Right, Siedler up through turn 12. Sorry, John.
Down into turn 5 now. So then that little sprint through 6, which is totally irrelevant. And here is maybe it's the trickiest part of the racetrack, because it's easy to carry too much speed in and then compromise your exit through turn 8. Mercedes behind heavily on the headlight flasher. Oh, it's not a Mercedes at all. It's this JP Motorsport, but the Mercedes behind. That's the car I saw flashing at Norbert Siedler.
All right, Jules Gounod fastest now in the pit lane, so a driver change imminent. Christopher Hauser has taken over from Mathieu Drudy. And the slowest car in the session is Ian Logie in the SPS Mercedes, but 47th, well, it's now just changed. So I was going to say 47th out of 48 was number 99, the Alex Arca Audi, but that's just improved, so it's got itself away from the danger zone, as it were. One or two others, though, John, out of position.
Yes, but one car that has improved is the 77 Barwell Motorsports Lamborghini in 29th position. So I think going back to the comments by Mark Lemmer, team principal, what they were doing this morning and what they're doing now, no resemblance whatsoever.
Fred Vervisch has just come into the pits in the number 46 WRT Audi, and as a consequence that's falling because he's not being able to respond to other people who are improving. But again, get into the car as quick as you can, Valentino Rossi, and give him the mileage. Fabian Schiller in number 777 Mercedes, he's just gone 3rd in the car that he shares with Faisal Al-Zubair and Axel Jeffries, the Zimbabwean driver. So Fabian Schiller, there he is, 3rd fastest, and looking good right now as he comes up through turn 3.
And that's a silver car.
Yeah.
The two cars ahead are both pro cars, but that's a silver car. Again, fastest overall Sector 1. So something working on that Almana Racing by HRT. They've got it right, and Fabian Schiller's hooked in to the racetrack right now. But traffic ahead is going to maybe stall out. It's the number 30 WRT Audi. So Schiller will want to maintain that momentum he's gained and not really get inhibited by the 30. I don't think the Audi is going to give way because he's got enough clear air. So Schiller is ultimately the personal best by 0.3 of a second in the middle sector, but of course he's virtually backed out of it now. There's ain't nothing to be gained by running up to the back of the 30-yard. He's not going to improve his present third time running behind a car that's going to interfere with the aero and other elements of this lap. So disappointment for Schiller.
I mentioned a moment ago, Alex Arca was down at the bottom of the times. He's had 3 laps successively taken off him for track limit offences, all at the same place, all up at turn 9. Fabian Schiller then on a frustrating end to the lap, still goes fastest, 1:45.398, despite losing a bit of time in the last sector. Excellent effort, that.
Yeah, but he still got purple in that final sector, so that was a good lap, better than I anticipated it to be. So we've got now a silver car topping the lists.
So Fabian Schiller, fastest of all, ahead of Jules Gounon. So it's a Mercedes 1-2 as out onto the circuit there. Heads the Jota McLaren. Rob Bell had been driving it, and it had dropped a little in the order while it was in the pit lane. That's now got Ollie Wilkinson at the wheel, number 38. Sky Tempest Mercedes through, and the 2 Garage 59 McLarens overlap on the road. Now here is Casper Stevenson in the next to the silver class cars of note, the Mercedes from the Acodis ASP team. And he's about to catch a wall of traffic, isn't he, looking at this?
Again, he was a little bit quick into turn 7, had to make a small adjustment to get the car straightened and back for turn 8, but personal best by a significant margin in that middle sector. That's been then readjusted. Nevertheless, he's gained effectively the best part of 0.7 of a second, and he's got this final sector to complete a lap. So presently 19th. So what will this do if he can get through these final 3 corners? And he's been economical going through them, not run the curb aggressively, which to me is the better way. I just don't enjoy seeing a car hop, skipping and jumping over the curbs in those final 3 sections or corners of the circuit.
It's wide, wasn't he, out of turn 15? An improvement in the time, 10th fastest now, 1:46. As we look at the Porsche number 54, which is Alessio Picariello, the Belgian driver, at the wheel of the car. We've seen a lot of him racing in the Asian Championship within Fanatec GT. Good to have him back in Europe.
Behind the 51 Ferrari, so it's looking to make a second or more improvement. 19th as he comes across the line. And waiting for the update, which doesn't come through, must remain 19th. Which, when you see the amount of personal gains he made, I thought maybe there would have been a further improvement.
The lap time was better, but didn't improve his place. So Miguel Molina still stuck behind traffic, and the sister car, number 71 of Antonio Fuoco, has just lost a lap time for the dreaded track limit offences. Christian Klein had an off this morning, but his McLaren is currently 5th fastest, and he's with Gemma Scott in the pit lane.
Christian, you've obviously just got out of the car in that session. This morning's session wasn't quite as you'd planned. Bit of a moment. What happened there?
I ran out of talent. Easy as that. Went in a little bit too hot into the corner, and there you go. But the spin around was good fun.
Yeah, it's always a bit of fun in free practice,
yes.
Never in the qualifying sessions. But talk to me now, the car's feeling good, handling well?
Yeah, the car is handling well, but the track conditions make it very difficult. It's especially this afternoon, it got very hot now. There's a lot of sliding around from all the cars that you see. So, and it's also tricky to get a free lap here. I managed to do so just the run before, but I think everybody is fighting here, and it will be a long Sunday afternoon, that's for sure, where you have to stay on track.
Is the track here harder as it gets hotter?
Yes, it gets much harder the hotter it gets. You just lose grip, and the tires do have a hard time here. And yeah, you just have to manage it as a driver, but also our engineers, their head is spinning a bit because we keep complaining.
Give them a break. Thanks a lot, Christian.
Cheers, thank you.
I mean, one way you can adapt your car to these conditions Christian Klein's just been describing is essentially set the car up to be slightly more towards oversteer at the beginning of a stint, knowing that you're going to lose grip, and therefore mostly it'll be front-end grip. And the hope, maybe it's all a bit of a hope, that once that procedure gets underway, then the balance of the car comes a more neutral balance. Now, it used to work back in the good old days, but whether these good old days were allowed to what we're seeing here right now, I do not know. And of course, Barcelona is probably the most challenging circuit of all that we'll go to through the season. in respect to the conditional changes between morning and low temperatures and afternoon and high temperatures.
We've had a spin, we understand, from 52. Stefano Costatini, who is back in the pit lane. This is Leo Roussel in the number 19 Lamborghini, heading towards turn 15, heading towards the timing line. 30th quickest for Emil Frey Racing he is at the moment. And we've just had Lorenzo Ferrari go 9th fastest, number 57 in the Winward Racing Mercedes. So that's a good effort, as here number 19 sweeps its way up through turn 3, where it climbs and it climbs and it turns and it turns. So Leo Roussel, prototype racer as well as GT racer in sports car terms, now into turn 4, go through that next right-hander.
Looking for another Lorenzo. It's a Lorenzo Patrese. He was quickest in the number 11 Audi. They ended up 13th this morning, so wonder where that car might be. Looking up and down. Oh, it's all the way down to 38th position with Lorenzo behind the wheel. That's not representative of what they did this morning, but again, it's part of the whole process.
But again, in some cars, we talked about one or maybe two drivers rather a lot in the first session. Now you're seeing the other driver being given some track time. Arnold Robin down to 27th in the car that was quickest, thanks to Ichiro Tomita in the Gold Cup in the free practice period. Now we're into pre-qualifying. This, having been damaged this morning, runs with an unpainted nose. I suspect that WRT aren't exactly eager to order lots of replacement parts for really their penultimate weekend as an Audi team. There's only IGTC in Abu Dhabi, I suppose, to think about, really.
Yeah, I mean, that car will very quickly be stickered up, or what do they do? They put on, what's that thing you do, bodywork? Wrap. They'll probably have an appropriate wrap, so somebody will be out with a hairdryer, getting it all nice and stretchy. Not a lot of painting done on carbon fiber bodied cars these days. Most of it is all done by a wrap.
Now this is the car that's fastest into the last corner. So remember, that's coming out of the chicane onto the power. And Yuki Nomoto, 146 kilometers an hour in the Lamborghini. Chris Froggett's Mercedes, the same. Lorenzo Patrese might be a long way down the times, but he's well up in terms of bravery, 145 kilometers an hour, matched by Nikolai Schiergaard and also by, in 163, Andrea Cola.
Would you have guessed any of those five to be the quickest into the last corner?
Not a bit of it.
With respect, and I say it with respect, not one of them that I imagine would be amongst the five quickest. Just goes to show that what you see and sometimes what you get on a timing and scoring are not always going to equalise.
Well, here is Yuki Nomoto up towards the timing line, and that's Ollie Wilkinson coming over the line in the McLaren. So Nomoto doesn't improve on that lap, but is 34th out of 48 in the times. Right, that is number 33 Audi, which lost bodywork earlier, being refettled. And it was Arnold Robin who brought the car in. 911 Porsche here. That's currently Alfred Renner at the wheel. Ooh, big bounce over the curve there, wasn't it?
Yeah, down in 43rd position, so capable of doing much better. Whether this lap will actually contribute to that or not. Great to see he comes across the line in 43rd position, and nothing has changed so far. So it's still the 777 Mercedes AMG GT3 that leads the charge in that 1 minute 45.3 driver change. Behind the wheel, Al-Fazl Al-Zubair behind the wheel right now.
This Porsche, third in Gold Cup in the championship, so looking to see whether it can improve to second before the end of the season. If the Inception rating McLaren were not to score, and this car won its class, then it's got a chance, but there's also the Iron Dames Ferrari in between them that needs to be factored in as well. So gold is another battle to keep an eye on when we go racing tomorrow. But of course, before all of that, in qualifying, there is a point for each driver within the car that takes pole position in each class.
Did this entrant and drivers take part on your Fanatec eSport event tonight? Because there are points available.
There are. They don't. It's pro silver that enter a car, but not the gold.
Not the gold. Okay. So that takes that unanswered out of the equation.
Yeah.
Marcello, Raffaele Marcello. Was I missing something? Were they always second quickest? Or the 88 car rather than Marcello?
Yeah, Gounon had done the time, hadn't he, earlier?
So,
but now Raffaele Marcello into the car after about 5 minutes in the pits, and he's still second fastest as Alfred Renard here, not looking like he's about to improve, comes down towards turn 15 to the timing line now. He will accelerate through over the line, still 43rd, so no improvement for him. Ian Logie, surprisingly the slowest, bearing in mind he's on the verge of winning the British GT Championship, but he's not being able to squeeze the pace for the moment out of the SPS Mercedes. Right, number 33 Audi, having replacement bodywork fitted.
It's having a rough all day, isn't it?
Yeah. Front and back damaged in its off. Really only about 3 hours ago in that free practice session. So the bodywork hopefully fitted and fixed this time, so it's not going to blow loose. And then they can send the car back into the session as Frederick Schandorf, who'd already gone 5th, has done an absolute best in the middle sector. And the Inception Racing McLaren comes through 3rd fastest now, 1:45.566. Great effort by Frederick Schandorf, Ollie Milroy, and hopefully tomorrow when he's flown in from the States, Brendan Arieb to share the driving.
Yes, that's in the middle sector. He scored a purple fastest overall time. So McLaren working well in, it's still a technical area, not maybe so technical as the final sector of the circuit, but nevertheless, it's a good effort indeed by Frederick Schandorf. 1:45.5 and a small amount of difference between that and the 88 Mercedes.
Right, that's the Barwell Lamborghini. Jordan Witt hasn't raced a car since Imola back in April, so he's a little bit race rusty. So this morning was really spent getting drivers up to speed, getting them to learn the circuit before you throw on and arguably waste new tyres.
It's a bit like a bicycle. You never lose it, do you?
Lose it.
Fall off the thing, get straight back on again. So either you got talent or you ain't got talent. I think Jordan Witt has a significant amount of the talent. Oh, a bit of rubber flew up off the wheel. So, are we going to see this racetrack become a single line racetrack tomorrow afternoon with rubber shredding off the tires, especially in those long corners, turn 3 in particular, and to some degree up at turn 9?
Possible, isn't it? And look at that in the top speed tally of speeds. They're all aero-friendly cars, aren't they? That's not about grunt, that's about aero, looking at it. Ollie Wilkinson's McLaren 269, Ferrari, Audi, Lamborghini, Ferrari the next. But 269 in Ollie Wilkinson's McLaren is impressive.
But that's down from what we saw this morning.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
It's down by not quite 10 kilometres, but certainly a good 8 kilometres over the fastest that we saw in that more dense, cooled air.
So the Barwell Lamborghini goes through. Back on track behind is Arnold Robin after his pit stop to patch back up the bodywork. And we're not far off the halfway point of this 90-minute session. Jordan Witt up the curb. Catch those at the wrong angle and you'll soon be spat across the road and into real strife. Up the road ahead is the Sky Tempesta Mercedes, and that in the pit lane is Finlay Hutchison's Audi, number 31.
And not new tyres going on, not a fresh set of Pirellis. That's a set of tyres that's had some running. So they chose to push the car into the garage to do more work on it without having to. There's a limit on the number of people in the pit lane, and the safest thing to do is bring it back in the garage, put it up on the axle stands, and away we go.
So the Audi will be brought back onto the pit apron, dropped down, fired up. They can rejoin the session. As I say, Finlay Hutchison brought it in, and has that got the rear? It has the full rear bodywork around the wheels.
You might call them spats.
Yeah.
And it's got the full complement of spats, as opposed to some of the other WRT Audis, which are wearing the short back and side version.
Now this is Raffaele Marciello, who's not yet lit up the timing screen. So the Italian driver comes through, and he is down in sectors 1 and 2 on this lap. But let's see what he can do as he gets into a run now.
Feely's just hovering around, waiting for the opportunity for a lap which he feels is going to be, he's launching it through that final corner, but he's going to be too far behind to be able to pick up any meaningful slipstream, and that car will come into play for the remainder of the lap for Marciello. Just before the 100-meter board gets down through the gears into turn 1, then the transition through 2, just stay off that green part of the circuit. You're right now, all along, having to balance the car. Couldn't quite carry it flat out all the way through turn 3, which is again a reflection of the time of day, the level of temperature on the circuit, the condition of your tires, and the feeling that the driver gets. He gets it through his hands, his feet, his whole body is a sort of massive sensory organ, and that's what really allows the driver to either go slow or very quick, whichever it is, whatever the message is.
Adam Eteke here for the Boutsen Racing team, and he is up to 11th in the times and has done a personal best within the first sector. So he's been quick this year, he's been impressive this year.
Very impressive on Hockenheim. I thought, certainly in that wet session we had, he was absolutely a star.
So let's see what he can do in the middle sector then. 11th fastest, the Audi. Down in the middle sector is the answer. He's dropped a bit of pace there, but there's also traffic up the road. Treble 7, which was the Fabian Schiller, now Faisal Al-Zubair Mercedes, reported to the stewards for speeding in the pit lane. And the racetrack busy. I think only now about 6 cars out of the 48 in the pit. So the road is busy, and therefore traffic becomes an issue.
And you can see on the outside of turn 16 the amount of rubber build-up. So I suspect as the weekend progresses, I don't know whether they'll sweep the track tonight. Sometimes you see a track being swept after the activities have ceased, but certainly that line through turn 16 is going to become narrower and narrower if there isn't a sweeper right tonight.
Now number 46 is about to become Valentino Rossi, because Fred Vavish is done, Nico Müller is in, he's doing, and then Valley will take over for the final part of this session. So Nico Müller and Fred Vavish go out, see what the track is like, perhaps work on the setup, and then put Valentino Rossi into, rather than try and set the car up, give him the base product that works, but then do the miles.
Yeah, they need to give him a car that's not going to give him any unnecessary frights or scares, that he has to be erratic or a lot of hand movement. We have seen on other occasions on board with Valentino, there's been a lot of very erratic, short, sharp wheel movements. He needs to find a way to drive through that and find the rhythm. If you like the rhythm he used to have on a MotoGP bike, where watching him ride a bike on 2 wheels, just magic to watch. He hasn't yet locked into that rhythm that he had on a motorcycle.
So Nico Müller at the wheel, another driver coming to the end of his Audi association. Peugeot beckons for the future for Nico Müller. Goes now up to turn 12. As John said earlier on, patience, patience, patience. Then you can finally accelerate. This car's only 32nd at the moment. So this suggests setup rather than time, doesn't it, that they're working towards here?
Yeah, I mean, I think that just here we come into the pit, so Valentino's going to jump on board. Nico Müller shortcuts the entry into the pit lane, which you're permitted to do, as long as you don't put all 4 wheels over that demarcation white line, then down to 50 kilometers per hour for the short run, because normally WRT Audi would have the very end pit boxes. For some reason, they've got the early pit boxes, which is causing a substantial amount of walking in the part of getting up and down to our meal stations. Not accustomed to having to walk the length of a pit lane to go and have a little snack.
So Nico Müller about to hop out. The ideal places are pit in the first garages or pit out because you've got a bit more space on one side. Otherwise, you've got neighbours on either side of you. But Valentino Rossi is good to go. And how many more races he will do this year, we don't yet know. He was asked yesterday in a press conference whether he was going to do the Gulf 12 Hours, for example, the IGTC race, an event he's done in the past. Well, the answer was he'd like to, but he wasn't sure in what car. If WRT is by that stage no longer running Audis or doesn't have as many in its fleet, then it might be difficult. But we'll see. If there's a desire from him and the event organisers, I'm sure he'll be on board.
A major draw, wherever he is.
Driver change imminent by the look of it at Acclimatise ASP.
The seat insert. So that's the 88. So Raffaele Marcello and Jules Gounod are both tall lads. So you have to think that that might be Danny Juncatella. Do I get a prize if I'm right?
You do. You do.
I mean, I'll have to pay for wine again tonight.
Right, Nico Muller out. Valentino Rossi in. That car is in its garage. That's why you can see all the people on one side, and you can see now the mechanics getting in. So there's no stress needed here. Put the car in the garage, take your time, get him in, get him comfortable, then send him out, rather than have to frantically do it on the pit apron. Whereas 88, as we've been saying, Raffaele Marcello, not entirely sure what the benefit of that last stint was, because he's not improved his time. He's only done a handful of laps and has brought the car back in, possibly for Danny Juncatella to take over. So what it was that they were achieving in that by putting him back in, I don't know.
All I can imagine is they're looking for continuity and consistency to see with on set of tires that is not a brand new set of tires, what is the metronomic lap time that that car is capable of generating. Because, I mean, you're going to have to deal with traffic in the race, you're going to have to deal with lap traffic, you're going to have to deal with people exiting the pits at the end of every hour. So I would imagine it was about seeing if they can run to a consistent time, whatever that consistent time might have been. Could have been as high as a 147, 148.
Maybe so, maybe so. Right, 71, this is the other car, of course, fighting for the championship. Alessio Rivera is at the wheel now, the Italian GT champion, and 10th. So this car looking a bit more racy than it did this morning.
Well, it looked distinctly on racy this morning. I mean, down in 22nd position. I mean, it was totally out of position compared to its normal race pace. Ooh, and the Porsche just ahead, running, flirting with the curb on the exit of turn 8. Rivera will have been conscious of that and just keeping an eye out to see whether the Porsche was going to stay on track, which it did, no problem whatsoever. Down into turn 10. Ooh, they can look at the back of the Porsche, just under acceleration, and a little bit of tire giving up the unequal challenge of grip.
You can almost feel the frustration through turn 12, can't you? The car, the driver, eager to get the power down, but having to wait and wait and wait.
You can't always have the perfect scenario, and at some point you're going to have to go through the frustration, if you like, of knowing that there's just no more grip on the can. There's nothing there available.
Yeah. Now, coming out of turn 3, which is that first long uphill right, Antonio Fuoco's Ferrari is the fastest, 196 kilometers an hour. Porsche second, Alessio Picariello doing 195. Ferrari third, Stefano Costatini 193. Casper Stevenson's Mercedes, and also James Dorlin in the Barwell Lamborghini 192 kilometers an hour. And this is turn 3, through which Rivera now turns, and then hard on the brakes down to turn 4. You can see down to second gear here.
That exit speed's not a million miles away from what we saw this morning, so that part of the circuit doesn't seem to be as affected by rising temperatures and not running fresh tires. So that's the mystery of this place. It's not just a lap you've got to focus on, it's virtually each corner is delivering up a different characteristic.
The last pit stop of the Lippert Lamborghini team is under investigation, incidentally, as we look now at Lorenzo Patrese, 44th here. The time has not really been unlocked out of this car as yet, has it?
Not at all. And you see that last lap, 3.8 seconds down in that final sector. So that is not a reflection of Lorenzo Petresi. That's a reflection of what the team is doing. And give the kid another set of fresh black Pirelli sticky race tires, and he'll be right up there knowing the heritage that's behind the wheel.
The Barwell Lamborghini's improved again. Alex McDowell doing a 1:47.0 last time. And Lorenzo Petresi comes then through. Another car that's about to ignite, I reckon, is the number 20 Mercedes. Dominic Baumann has just taken over from Ian Loggy, and that ought to storm its way up from being at the foot of the times.
Well, currently got a personal best in Sector 1, which is down to Dominic Baumann, so wait and see what he does through the remaining 2 sectors. So we follow Petresi up through and exiting turn 9. And the drop down. How steep is that drop down, David? Did you have a problem with braking into turn 10?
Not at all. It was a welcome run. It feels narrow as you get to the corner itself because of the barriers on either side of you, but ooh, big twitch there, wasn't it? Up through 12.
Yeah, that's just ain't any grip, and the throttle just overcame the ability of the tyre to stay in control. So Ricardo Petresi, well, there's a bit of a Freudian slip. Lorenzo, the son of Ricardo, comes up to compete another lap.
Turn 14, yeah, he's going to stay out. But he's just not achieving anything here other than learning the circuit.
Well, I think there's that element to it, but I think also the team just want information on what used tyres are going to do over a sequence of laps. I mean, how much fuel's on board as well is another matter that only the team might choose to let us have that information, but that's the sort of information teams don't really want to give you unless there's a very good reason.
Nico Gomar in the AJS Events Lamborghini here. This car is 26th in the times out of the Gold Cup. That suggests it was a Mike Parisi time from earlier on. Nico Gomar, who we've seen in French GT, we've seen in Lamborghini Super Trofeo. Comes up towards the timing line, goes through, and that lap is not an improvement.
And this is, of course, a gold category entry, so wouldn't be anticipating many of the gold runners to be up at the front end of timing and scoring at this particular juncture. Andrea Bertolini on that subject in the 52 Ferrari, they of course entry 37th. That's an improvement. Baumann has improved equally from being 48th to 41st. That's almost it. Oh, I can't contain my excitement when I see an arrow, a green arrow on timing and scoring pointing up rather than a red pointing down.
Well, Dominic Baumann will be relieved. What about this Porsche? Can we talk this one up as well? 56, then the Dynamic Motorsport car, the Giorgio Roda, Marius Narken and Mikkel Pedersen entry. But that's got a bit of time to find right now. Danny Jonkidea did take over 88, so you've got a prize. Albert Costa improved last time, then got elbowed down by the improved Alfred Renard, who's just put 9.11 up the order. And what about Patrick Niederhauser here?
Well, personal best, first and second. And can he carry that pace all the way through? Ought to be able to. He's got nothing immediately in front of him that's going to detract from the time. Uses every bit of the racetrack and the curb and comes through turn 16, 17th right now, maybe up to 15th, maybe better. 5th, well, that took my breath away a little bit, but he's your star.
Well, he is, and we are gradually seeing the best of him in Fanatec GT. He's already won the German Championship previously, but Patrick Niederhauser, again, who had a good reputation in single-seaters, and the Santalok team gets better all the time in GT3 terms as well. 5th quickest, good effort, that puts him ahead of Charles Weerts. The best Audi, by the way, is from the Car Collection team, the Trésor by Car Collection squad. Christopher Haas's number 12 entry.
And that's the car with wearing a pair of long spats at the rear, rather than the WRT short version.
Ollie Milroy has taken over then from Frederick Schandorf, but a bit of a McLaren traffic jam here because he's got Manuel Maldonado just ahead of him.
Well, it'll be interesting to see whether Milroy can do anything with Maldonado. Both these cars have had very, very good straight line performance. And looks like Ollie Milroy is desperate to get through, but making that move up the inside was pointless because there was never going to be an opportunity. And in fact, he's probably lost a little bit of ground to the Garage 59 entry.
Valentino Rossi, just to go back a conversation, is 35th in the times, 35th. He's now into the car, but there's an awful lot of time to find in that to propel it up the order as we look now at number 911. So Alfred Ranauer, 19th. He's hauled that car into contention very definitely.
Yes, good effort indeed. There in the 911. Just on the subject of Valentino, his last lap was 1 minute 50.1, so clearly other elements, traffic or whatever, had a bearing on that particular lap time, but Alfred Ranauer looking to make further improvements, almost half a second up through sector 1, through this middle part of the circuit, the drop down through 6 into 7, and gets through there pretty well indeed. Up the hill into turn 9. And when you think that the fundamental, the base design of this car is basically, it's coming up to 60 years old. The 911, I think, was first previewed in 1963. Went into production in 64.
And that base shape, you can still tell, doesn't matter how big the cars get, how wide they get, how many appendages they sprout, it always looks like a Porsche.
And you know what? There's the perfect example of development over design.
Yeah, indeed. So, third in Gold Cup in the championship, the combination of Alfred and Robert, the twin brothers Ranauer and Ralph Bowen. To the pit lane comes Alfred Ranauer. Driver change beckons, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think it was probably traffic ahead, so he lost some time in the middle sector, and I think it's an opportune time rather than staying out. We've only got 31 minutes remaining. The 28, the number 3 Mercedes that comes up and through turn 9. So who is behind the wheel of the 28?
Valdemar Eriksson in the Pink Panther.
Yes, yeah.
Mercedes. That's one of the Get Speed cars, and ahead is a Harper Racing Team entry, which is number 5, which had problems this morning, but 9th at the moment. Remember, Hubert Haupt was quick earlier. Florian Scholzer trying to get out of the way, I think, but eventually had to turn into the corner, and that gets in the way of Valdemar Eriksson, another ex-single-seater racer.
When you exit 12, if you're not alongside the car, you're trying to overtake, there's no way you're going to get through going into 13 without inevitably some kind of contact. So that kind of sort of dive bomb attempt, maybe it's just a little bit to frustrate Scholzer, but whatever it is, it doesn't gain you anything. And ultimately, maybe you end up losing a lap just out of sheer frustration that you weren't able to execute that overtake. There's the 20. So Baumann still behind the wheel. And is he staying out? We'll wait and see. The last lap for this car was 1:47.9. His best lap, 47.7, and he bails as well.
At what point do we expect people to start thinking qualifying and perhaps having a proper push? Last 15 minutes?
I don't expect it. I mean, some people might do it, but
yeah.
Conditions are so different to those that we will have tomorrow morning or we've had this morning. If you've got a set of brand new Pirelli tyres, I would save it. Right. I would save them for qualifying. And if you have any new ones for one of the 3 stints, I think then you're in the palm seat. If you run all your tyres and you're caught short for qualifying, but more importantly for one of your 3 drivers in the afternoon tomorrow, I think you've wasted a set of tyres.
Valdemar Eriksson still pushes on, 28th, and he still can't get past Scholzer. He sat behind him for a lap. Were this race day, we'd be getting excited about this, but Eriksson is frustrated. He's going to have to fight his way through. Scholzer needs to move out of the way, doesn't he?
Well, he does, but he's not required to do, because this is a pre-qualifying session. Down the inside, and there you can see that single-seater Heritage coming through. only a young man would take a punt like that and believe he'll get away with it.
Well, get away with it he did. Valdemar Eriksson then 28 fastest, but he lost a big chunk of time in that last sector. What else is going on in the session? Valentino Rossi is dropping, I'm afraid to say. It's still a number 777 Mercedes that's topping the times from 88 Mercedes. McLaren number 7 is third. And that, number 26 Audi, which was quickest in class this morning, is quite a long way down at the moment.
Yeah, unfortunately for Valentino, the best lap of the 46 to date is a 47.2. Valentino's last lap was a 48, but he's just done a 48.1. So it's just over a second down. And, well, whether Valentino starts, does the middle sector, or does the final sector, I'm anticipating we're going to have very similar ambient and track temperatures to those we're seeing right now. Driver consistency, David, I don't get the point of, but you might want to walk us through it.
Take a driver's 5-lap stint, and this is, if you like, the average of the consistency of them. So the most consistent driver over 5 laps has been Aurélien Panis.
Okay, which of those 5 cars is a likely winner?
Of those 5, the most likely winner would be Audi number 26.
Would you put your money on that?
No.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
But
I understand the purpose of that, because it's got interest and people will want to know where consistency comes. But actually, the cars that are most likely to win, why are they not on that top 5 consistency?
It's interesting, isn't it? That the Mercedes, for example, Danny from Cadea, now getting into a stint. Those we were looking at, I think, in isolation were just out of silver. So 26 should be there or thereabouts. So those Silver Cup cars, in terms of an overall result, are going to depend on the relative pace of a driver. But we'll have a look at the cars in the overall category, as it were, in due course. Those are the ones you might put money on for the outright race win. 27 minutes and counting of the session to go. And there is the car that is 15th fastest that topped the times this morning. Stein Scotthorst at the wheel of number 2. And has just improved within the first sector. So here is a car that's worth latching onto, because this should be an improver. Stein Scotthorst then comes now down to turn 7.
Currently only 15th quickest, and a little bit ragged in that transition 7 to 8. Traffic directly ahead of him. Want to see what the middle sector is going to show us. Is it still a green sector time, but the Lamborghini directly ahead is going to come into effect. Well, he's lost over a second in that middle sector, so you can blame the Lamborghini in small part. I think the time was lost in turn 7 and 8 for Shorthouse.
So this is Stein Scotthorst down towards the chicane, and he's got traffic ahead. He's also, as we've seen, lost out in the middle sector. Pitting, he's in.
So the quickest car from this morning is still in 15th position on a 146.3 compared to a 144.3.
Contact there, that was 27 Lamborghini on 5 Mercedes, 27 Brendan Leach, and 5 was Florian Scholze the last time we looked, because he was getting in people's way a little bit. It still is Scholze, but he's now pitted after that clang between the two of them. Alex McDowell there for Barwell through the traffic, gets ahead of the number 10 Karim-Auger driven Audi now.
So Karim-Auger allowed the Lamborghini to get through really without any significant fight, but Karim gets rather wide on the exit of 12, kicked a bit of gravel dust up in the air, but no difficulties indeed. So he will continue on and look to make a further improvement.
So McDowell goes through, still 29th in that car, as 24.5 minutes, give or take, remain. 48 cars have ventured out, and there are quite a lot in weird places, in a sense, like the Rover BMW is only 37th, Valentino Rossi's car is only 36th, Albert Costa's Lamborghini is only 35th. Now, I know I say it every time, you can't have everybody in the top 10, obviously, and we don't know who's run new and old tyres, but there are certainly, compared to what you would expect as a race classification, a fair few cars further down than anticipated, and therefore others further up than anticipated.
Well, Albert Costa in the 63 Lamborghini, 35th quickest, has found over half a second in sector 1. So that ought to see it elevate itself up if he can maintain that rate of pace through the final 2 sectors. Loses 1.4 in the middle sector, will cancel out anything I've just said there. So that's not going to see. There is the 63 Lamborghini coming through turn 12. Car looks good. I mean, I have to say, looks like it's got a reasonable level of grip coming through that long turn 12 into 13. So maybe it was a traffic matter for the Spanish driver from this region. Is he a Barcelonian or is he a Catalonian?
Oh, I need to double check.
Probably a bit of both, actually.
But this car doesn't really, as yet, look competitive. I know qualifying's a different story. The best Lamborghini at the moment is the Alfa Rougier car, number 19, that is 8th fastest.
All one can draw an assumption is that that car's tanked full of fuel. To lose that amount of time in that final sector, there's got to be a reason. And the car looks quite well balanced. I don't think there's any issue with the car's balance. I don't know what the level of grip is in terms of what it might do on an empty tank on a qualifying run. But maybe just a high fuel load, fuel load weight equates to time, and can't see any other reason. Car looks good. Costa's not doing anything crazy.
So, could be down to old tyres. And you heard Christian Klein saying that the road is slippy, all the cars having a little bit of wash. And it's going to be an interesting race in that basis then, because it's due to be hotter tomorrow, and if tyres are fading away over a stint, then tyre management is going to be all important. Now there, going through, was Ricardo Fella. Behind, you've got Albert Costa, and he is not improving in the sectors. Big frustration this for Emile Frey Racing. But on the current evidence, this is not going to be a Lamborghini weekend, because the cars are just nowhere as yet.
As yet. So I think all I can say is tune in tomorrow morning, because what we're going to watch in qualifying could be the most exciting qualifying session of the season. There's a lot of cars out of position. A lot of drivers know the pace their car's got. In this particular pre-qualifying session, there's nothing to put on display.
Albert Costa, we understand from Gemma in the pits, is on old tyres and trying to do a long run. So no point wasting a new set, so that all makes sense. And again, this is one of the elements of this session. You never fully know what the team is trying. Now here is a newcomer to the WRT ranks, Ricardo Fella, who's been doing great things in the DTM of late, ex-single-seater racer. He takes over the seat of Calvin van der Linde, who's not very well this weekend. So Ricardo Fella thrown in to help Dries van Thor and Charles Weerts, but makes sense to give him the mileage.
Yeah, I mean, just again on the exit of turn 4 under power, you can see the back of the car sliding, just zero amount of grip under throttle. Ricardo Fella, who I think will be a very good replacement for Kelvin van der Linde. Kelvin get well soon, hope it's nothing too concerning. And so Fella climbs up the hill, has to really get out of the throttle big time, going through turn 9. Again, look at the time loss, a further second in that middle sector. So I think the view of the rear of the Audi coming through the exit of turn 4 was indicative of what the car, in terms of, it's got a reasonable balance, but it just hasn't got a lot of grip.
So Fella down in the sectors, but again, this could be that as he learns the car on the circuit, they put him on old tyres rather than waste a new set of Pirellis. Up towards the timing line, this isn't going to set the world alight, is it? But it's going to be another gain of data. The slowest car in the session, which is the Cedric Sprazzuoli, Ugo Delacour, Alessandro Balzan Ferrari, is under investigation for a possible infringement in his last pit stop. Ricardo Fella now heads out of turn 2, bounces over the curb a little bit, that unsettles the car and therefore just slightly compromises the exit into turn 3 here, climbing the hill, and he's having to fight the car there as well.
Yeah, I mean, if your car is low on grip, you don't really want to be running a curb, because that's only going to add to your grip levels. There's Mervyn Kickhofer in the 38 due to McLaren, and again just watching under acceleration up to turn 12 that it's very easy in these cars to break rear traction, even though they've got traction control and other devices to aid the driver. But you want to dial that down as much as possible. You want to keep the control of the rear wheels. Oh, that was aggressive and not very pretty to look at either. That big thump of the curb. Shock load goes into the left rear suspension, which is, but he improves. Look at 9/10 up in that final sector.
So he's up to 15th. Marvin Kirchhofer did improve.
Yeah.
Good effort. So that brings the Jota McLaren, the rebuilt Jota McLaren, back into the mix.
I wonder what time he would have done if he hadn't hit the curb so aggressively.
Well, indeed. But
maybe a couple of tenths, maybe that's all it would have been.
He lost the time in the middle sector.
He did.
Anything.
He did.
Right, into the pits has just come Nick Yellowley's Rover BMW, which is way down. That's the Ollie Milroy driven McLaren. I think he's going to stay behind the wheel, leading the Gold Cup at the moment. No, I'll tell you a lie. Yes, he is leading the Gold Cup because the fastest car at right is a silver. So leading gold is Ollie Milroy.
Another car that's well and truly out of position is the 56 Dynamic Porsche. Mikael Pedersen down in 40th, but actually he's improved up to 40th. And, you know, like Nick Yellowley in the 98 Rover Racing BMW, why are these cars that far away from what would assume to be sort of high teens, at worst maybe low teens overall lap time?
Tyres, you can levy for some of that, I suppose, as an explanation. Sarah Bovey, another of the Gold Cup challengers in the Ferrari here, the Iron Dames car run by the Iron Lynx team. One of the prime movers of which is Andrea Piccini, former FIA GT race winner himself, comes over the timing line now. Sarah Bovey goes through the Barcelona circuit, the Circuit de Catalunya, like a number, has the start and finish lines in different places. So the finish line, the timing line, is closer to the exit of the last corner, whereas the start line is a bit further down the pit straight. Another lap time cancelled, and it was from the WRT Gulf Audi last time around. Benjamin Goethe at the wheel of the car. He's lost a lap time. 16 minutes are on the clock. Treble 7 then. Fabian Schiller is back out, and that's the car that's the fastest. There's the one that's just lost its lap. Benjamin Goethe getting up through the traffic as he comes towards now turn 9. Well, that's another corner that seems to go on forever, and as you're turning, you can't see the exit of it because the exit is over the brow. So you're turning, you're looking for where the straight is, and then finally it's in view.
Bit like cops at Silverstone. If you don't make a commitment, you're not going to be quick.
So Benjamin Goethe now finds himself in the traffic. I think I said this about this juncture in the earlier session, and then it started to get messy, but it's been a relatively calm session, hasn't it? We haven't had too much grief. The odd spin early on, but not a full course yellow, not a red flag, and there the Audi out of the chicane, down towards turn 15 now.
And the racetrack is effectively just about narrow its natural width as they enter into turn 16. And more Pirelli rubber is being shredded as tyre degradation begins to basically take away from the grip that drivers will be looking for.
Right, the team manager of the Lippert Lamborghini, number 27, is having to go to the stewards immediately regarding its previous pit stop. Benjamin Goethe, an improvement in Sector 1.
Yep, so that will be very welcome indeed. Currently 21st quickest. So traffic ahead is going to be the focal point for Goethe to see whether it will interrupt his flow on this lap. Middle sector time will come on the run down into turn 10, so we'll see whether the McLaren directly ahead is going to be, in fact, it's the Audi, I beg your pardon, number 10. So down the hill, so Goethe, what's he going to do? Is it going to be green or going to be it is green, 7/10 of a second, but can he slide through? No, he can't, and that's pretty much the end of this run for Benjamin Goethe. So he would have hoped maybe for a let you go chap. And he's going to have to wait until he gets back onto the start-finish straight, I think, before he can find a way around the number 10.
News from the pits from Gemma, who's been researching the travails of the Rover racing team and the BMW. Certainly as far as 98 is concerned, they're thinking that about 10th is as good as it's going to get for that car. The sister car, though, Neil Verhagen, is 12th, so there's a marked difference between the two in terms of position. In terms of time, it is about a second, but there are so many cars, so even if it is this championship, that it does put the second car a long, long way down. The closest margin between two cars is 0.08 of a second, which is the margin between Alex McDowell and Brendan Leach at the moment. I don't tell you a lie. Sarah Bovey to Nicholas Schurl, 0.03.
Biggest surprise for me of the session, we've got 12, just under 12 minutes, or just under 13 minutes to go, is the fact that the 63 Emil Frey Racing Lamborghini, Albert Costa behind the wheel, 37th. Now that's not a reflection of either the car, the team, or the drivers. I think it probably sums up what we've been watching through this session so far, is that it's not about setting lap times, it's about working with your car and with the tires to try and work out what are we going to do in 24 hours time.
The other one that's a bit of a surprise in a way is number 46 Audi, because although Valentino Rossi is not expected to set the fastest time in the session, Fred Vervisch or Nico Müller might be expected to be up there. Now again, put it down to old tyres if you wish, but that car didn't sparkle even when they were driving it, and as others have got quicker, so it's been pushed down the order.
Yeah, and I think Valentino's been given a reasonably long run here in this, will be his, I doubt they'll be coming in and doing any driver changes with what, just under 12 minutes remaining. So Valentino's going to be in. His last lap was a 1:48.5, and he's been hovering in that middle 1 minute 48 consistently. He's had the odd one a bit slower, but that's probably traffic related. So while he's not going out and setting times that are going to be, wow, did you see what Valentino just did? It's about just giving him consistency. Go out there and try and run and give us lap times without any highs or any lows, just consistency.
So over the timing line goes Brendan Leach, his team manager, heading to the stewards for a pit stop infringement. Brendan, who's also on Lamborghini Super Trofeo duties this weekend. That is still the car that's the fastest. Fabian Schiller in the Almanar Racing by HRT Mercedes. So in other words, Haupt Racing Team's car. Now, we were talking earlier about the Sky Tempesta crew and how they've struggled a bit with their Mercedes this year. Well, it's run by the same team, Haupt Racing Team, and yet it's all hooked up for this car in this session.
But of course, the differences between the cars will be the individual preferences of the drivers of the respective cars. So you might find somebody in one of the Haupt cars likes a car that's very compliant, and another one likes a car that's a bit more edgy. And in these circumstances, I don't think either way is the right way. I think you've just got to accept that you're going to have to deal with difficult track conditions. Continuity, consistency, don't make mistakes, don't try and be brave with a dive down the inside, and then come into the pits and just hit your marks and get in and out as cleanly and quickly as possible.
So 10 minutes of the session remain. Fabian Schiller goes through. That last lap was a 1:47.0. His best is a 45.3. So again, suggesting partly old tyres, but also that a race run now is being established. Now it's about time we went to the pits, I feel, and Gemma has found Augusto Farfus. We've been talking about number 98, the Rover BMW, and how it's been struggling. Augusto might be able to explain why. Let's hear from him.
Well, Augusto, we're not seeing you and the timing's exactly where we're expecting. What's the strategy here?
Well, we decide this afternoon, especially because this weekend somehow the track has been very different from what we used to. So we decided this afternoon to sacrifice any kind of quality run to try to optimize the car for the race. The race is going to be at this time of the day tomorrow. So we, as a team, we decide to only focus on kind of long runs and optimize our stint performance. So let's hope for tomorrow that it's going to work.
What's your expectation for tomorrow?
Well, I think we definitely are not the fast car on the field, but if we can aim for a top, top 8, I think it's possible. The field here is super tight. If you see the gaps among the cars are very tight. So we just have to try to optimize qualifying, be out of the trouble, and hopefully for a top 8, maybe even a top 5, who knows.
And save tyres, right?
Save tyres.
Thank you.
So now you know.
Well, I mean, how are we surprised? Just in terms of how competitive it is currently, the top 18 cars are covered by just under 1 second as the 98 BMW makes its way back onto the track. Nick Yellowly, we believe, is the piloto behind the wheel. So Augusto Farfus being optimistic, as he should rightly be, because tomorrow is a new day and it's going to be different circumstances. If it's even more track temperature and ambient temperature, well, that sort of throws the whole field up in the air, and I don't know anybody's going to predict a winner in those circumstances.
Just had Danny Juncadella storm back into the pit lane as we get to the final few minutes of the session. Number 21. This is the car, oddly, that's the slowest, even though you would think that perhaps the Ferraris are going to be quick. Cedric Sprazzioli at the wheel currently. And he is 0.2 of a second away from Marcus Pavarud's Lamborghini. So 2 Italian cars at the foot of the times, whereas Mercedes AMG look at the top, 1-2.
Yeah, the time
at the inside.
Sprazzioli's time 3 seconds away from the time by Fabian Schiller in the 777 Mercedes AMG GT3. 3 seconds around Barcelona. Well, you can add a couple of weeks to that because it's a mountain of time. And as Augusto Farfus was saying, circumstances, and it's almost a spooky feel about the nature of the circuit, the way the tires and the cars are interacting, and yeah, it's going to be a lottery tomorrow.
It is. It's going to be fascinating, that's for sure. There's no clear winner, and this session has been so different from the free practice session this morning. Qualifying a different story altogether, because it's not only about being quick, it is about all 3 drivers being quick. The grid based, of course, on the average of the 3 parts of qualifying. And then there's 3 hours of racing, so you get through all of this, and then the race itself could be a completely different story once again. 6 minutes of the session remain now. Right, Danny Juncadella, I think I told you, had brought 88 in. Luca Giotto is the pits in number 12. Sprazzioli rattles up the curb there, coming out of turn 8. And it's busy down at turn 10. Right, old traffic jam involving Riccardo Fella. That is Cedric Sprazzioli, who's raced in the Trofeo Maserati. He's raced in the European Le Mans Series. We've seen him in Fanatec GT on and off over the years as well. But right now, again, possibly because of old rubber, this car not unlocking its true pace.
No. I mean, looking at timing and scoring, it's a sea of yellow. You could almost be at the beach. There's just nothing. There's no other colour on timing and scoring. Well, you get the odd white timer point, but basically, everybody's done the work that they need to do. The pits, well, there's maybe 9 or 10 cars in the pits, and others are pounding around. Information gathering, of course.
That's it.
Getting the true value. Nick Yellowly in the 98, so that you can see 0.8 down, 1.4 seconds by the time you get to the middle sector.
Oh, another big rattle up the curb. Yellowly 39th. Nico Müller is back at the wheel of 46. He's 38th. Albert Costa 37th. So there are 3 big-name driver-car combinations that are a lot further down than they should be.
Interesting they put Müller in for the closing laps.
Yeah.
Because what we got, well, just under 4 minutes, 4.5 minutes. So Valentino Rossi, his best lap was consistently in the 1:48s. let's see what Muller can do if he can suddenly find a second over that of Valentino Rossi. What, with just 4 minutes and 20-odd seconds to go, so he's on an out lap, and he'll probably get 2 flying laps before checkered flag comes out.
Yeah, to me, putting Muller in suggests they want a time out of that car. Number 163 has been reported to the stewards for speeding in the pit lane. That's the Marcus Pavarot, Baptiste Moulin, Andrea Cola Lamborghini. Mick Yellerly drops downhill, but not improving in the first sector of this lap. He's running out of time in which he can improve, because we are into the last 4 minutes now.
You can see just how little grip Nick Yellerly has, and there's that left, right down at almost the low, not quite the lowest point of the circuit, the lowest point of the infield of the circuit, then dropping down the hill into turn 10. So not an awful lot of grip available to Nick Yellerly. Again, time, you can see middle sector down 1.7 seconds. So we go back now through the never-ending turn 12. That's the view looking towards the exit of turn 10. The flick of 11 back to turn 13. So just ease it into it, but he's backed out of it anyway. Oh, very clever, Nick, very clever. Lining it up to get a better run into turn 16 and hope maybe I've got a chance of doing something a little bit better. Now, just going back to Nico Müller, his first flying lap since taking over the car from Valentino Rossi is about 0.3 of a second quicker than Rossi's sort of average over the run he did. So we got, what, another, he might get one this lap and one more before the checkered flag. So immediately Muller's picked up 0.3 or so of a second.
So Yellerly now through turn 12, through turn 3, I should say, start of the lap, not the end of the lap, before a BMW LMDH program beckons for next year potentially for him. That's what's being reported. And this lap, again, I was trying to gauge whether he was backing out of it or staying on the money there. He's lost half a second or so within the first sector, but he is continuing at a decent pace, even if the car's not yet willing on these old tyres. The thing is, we put some of these slow laps down to old rubber. If every team is doing laps on old rubber, then again, there's a disparity, isn't there? Because some people are getting a better lap out of old tyres than others. This BMW has looked much more competitive, though, today.
Well, of course, you've got an Ulsterman behind the wheel, don't you?
That'll be it.
Dan Harper, another young protege who has got a massive future ahead of him. Look how much quicker he is through turn 9 than the dynamic Porsche, but can he get down alongside? Surely the Porsche's got to concede ground, it's got to break that little bit earlier. It does, and Dan Harper goes through, but 2.4 seconds down. Currently that car is 13th overall. Where's the difference between the junior BMW car and the 98?
Because I can't think they've thrown new tyres at this car.
No.
Well, because again, what's the point?
Maybe have just a better set. In the meantime, Nico Müller has come into the pits, and I would love to be a fly on the wall to hear that conversation. What is Müller saying about what the car is doing? Well, I suspect that car is in the pits for the duration of today. 55 seconds to go. Dan Harper comes across start-finish line. So 13th position remains. And at last lap, 1:49. So everybody's just grinding out the closing minutes, now closing seconds of a session that nobody really expected to see the times of this morning being challenged. 1:45.3 this afternoon, 1:44.3. In effect, a full second quicker at 9 o'clock or just after 9:19 than it's been at any point in this 1.5 hour session.
Right, Dan Harper, Neil Verhagen, Max Hesse, the 3 drivers of the junior team car. It'll be interesting to see the future of the junior project as well, won't it, for next season. Had 2 years together. Dan Harper, Carrera Cup GB champion. The checkered flag is out then, so pre-qualifying comes to an end. And there, over the line, 40th fastest, Sean Walkinshaw, sharing the Mad Panda Mercedes AMG with Ezequiel Perez Companca car that was damaged early yesterday.
Yeah, I don't know whether Sean has got the indicator out. So the right, there he is, he got the indicator out. That's probably just a slip of the hand, making a quick move on the steering wheel.
So that car hasn't really shone in the session, but again, it's 3 hours of racing that really matters for that car within the Silver Cup.
Well, Sage, what do you make of all this then?
I'd like to see somebody put new... Whoops, that's a mistake. That's what I make of that. I'd like to see somebody put new tyres on and really show what the cars are capable of. I mean, up and down the pit lane, there'll be a huge amount of data that the teams have gathered, which is relevant to them, but we can't yet assess, I don't think, the overall situation, because we don't really know who's done what in terms of rubber. We guess most of it been on old tyres, but what fuel load, and the sessions have looked so different. And again, the test sessions yesterday, they were McLaren dominated. Today, we've got Mercedes dominating in terms of being fastest in both.
Car looks immaculate. I'll give you a couple of hundred for it, mate. I mean, 100,000. I'll probably get the keys.
What do you make out of all of this that we've seen today?
I think this afternoon's session has been nothing about going and setting a lap time. It's about setting a consistent run of lap times, so as the teams will have an idea of ultimately comparing to what they believe will be the nearest challengers. What can we do over a long run with fuel on board, with no new tyres? I mean, some of the sets of tyres that will have been used will have been fresh-ish at the beginning of the session, but just, I mean, as the session has progressed, everybody's saying of no grip, of no grip, of no grip. Well, you're going to have no grip tomorrow afternoon either, so learn to adapt and drive around it.
48 cars covered by 3 seconds, which isn't bad on a long, nearly 5K lap. And everybody now making their way down the pit lane. But Fabian Schiller did a really good job to put the HRT Harper Racing Team Mercedes at the top of the times. There, the Iron Dames Ferrari heading back towards the pit road. Dominic Baumann, by the way, we actually mentioned this in Pro-Am, but he got the car to 8th overall, which was the one that was slowest for a time, whilst Ian Logie was behind the wheel. So at the end of the session, it is Fabian Schiller, who is the quickest by a 10th from Jules Gounon, and then third fastest, Frederic Schandorf, ahead of the Christopher Hauser, Matthew Rudy, Luca Giotto Audi. Then Christopher Mies, Patrick Niederhauser, Lucas Legere's car. It didn't really do that many laps. It didn't feel. I mean, it was out there for a reasonable amount of time, but set the bulk of its work early on. 6th for Dries van Thor, Charles Weerts, and new boy Ricardo Feller joining WRT this weekend, ahead of Christian Klein, Vincent Avril, and Dennis Lind. Then Dominic Baumann got the number 20 Mercedes to 8th and quickest in Pro-Am, ahead of Leo Roussel, Giacomo Altway, and Arthur Rougier. In the top 10, rounded out by Hubert Haupt, Arjun Maini, and Florian Scholz's Mercedes, ahead of Emile Frey's Silver Cup Lamborghini, and Antonio Fuoco only 12th, so that puts him on the back foot for the championship relative to his championship rivals. 13th fastest, the BMW Junior entry. A little bit further down, the Jota McLaren, 16th. Maro Engel, Lukas Stoltz, Stein Scotthorst, quickest this morning, 17th, but again, are they chasing a time? Unlikely. Working through data. The Gulf Audi got itself up to 22nd in the end, and only 26th, the Ferrari of Miguel Molina, Nicholas Nielsen, and Giancarlo Fisichella. The slowest of all was number 21 Ferrari of Cedric Strazioli. The Barwell Lamborghini, though, got itself up to 31st, so a step forward certainly taken relative to what we had this morning. The Iron Dames were 34th, and a long way back, Mirko Bortolotti, Jack Aitken, Albert Costa, likewise Fred Vervisch, Nico Muller, and Valentino Rossi, and the Augusto Farfus, Nick Yellowly, and Philip Eng, BMW, with Nick Katzberg away racing in America this weekend. So, a session that was an interesting one, but hasn't necessarily given us pointers. We'll know more when we get to qualifying tomorrow, looking at the highlights of that session that was really all about times being set early on in the most part, such as the Santa Loc Audi. Alessio Rivera did the work early on in number 71. Ferrari, as others, rattled over the curbs. And as the session wore on, we had contact between Brendan Leach and Florian Scholzer. Scholzer himself would get in the way of traffic a little bit as the session wore through. Jules Gounon quickest for a time in number 88 Mercedes, but ultimately it would be the Fabian Schiller Mercedes that put itself at the very top. Others having to cope with the traffic on old tyres as well, and a bit of contact between Porsche and Lamborghini. But ultimately, it was Mercedes 1 and 2 at the top of the times. Qualifying tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock local times. It's going to be chillier conditions. It'll be fascinating to see what pans out in that. But for today, from Gemma Scott, John Watson and David Anderson, goodbye.